Okay. So this is Edward Polsue, that's me, for WarGen. The date today is the 24th of July 2018. I'm going to be speaking to Mrs. Rosalie Sebba at her home in Finchley, North London. We shall be discussing her experiences during the Second World War when she was a radio mechanic for the Women's Royal Naval Service, which was more commonly known as the WRNS, in Britain from 1942 to 1945. So
we're actually Hampstead.
We're in Hampstead. I'm sorry, that's my fault.
No,
Sorry.
Finchley.
Okay, sorry about that. So first off, you were a petty officer, were you?
Yes.
Okay, in the WRNS. Before we talk about your military career, do you mind if I ask you a few questions about your childhood, and we'll sort of build up chronologically from there? So, when exactly were you born?
I was born in 1924.
1924.
And my father who was a doctor, died in 1925.
You don't know, crikey.
And I had an older brother, and my mother remarried a wonderful man, a Canadian, which accounts for the reason that I and the younger half-brothers and sisters were sent out to Montreal in 1940 after Dunkirk. My older brother, who just finished Harrow, went to Cambridge for first year before he joined up.
Okay. Which college was he at Cambridge?
Trinity Hall.
And what was he studying?
At that point, I think mineralogy.
Okay.
But later, after the war, he studied psychology.
Okay.
And did very well.
Fantastic. What was your stepfather? What did he do?
He was originally in the woolen trade. But he later worked for a firm of metals, I think, in London.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. And you were brought up in Phillimore Gardens in Kensington, and you lived in that house until the Blitz, presumably.
Until we were evacuated.
Until you were evacuated. Okay. And I mean, did your father serve in the First World War? Was he?
No, because he had mastoid. In those days, you couldn't. But he was in the Home Guard.
Was he?
In the Second World War.
Oh, fantastic.
And we had a nice house near Henley, and with a big garden and a gardener, and in the I was going to say Dad's army. He was always known as Corporal Mr. Levy.
Was he? Sort of adding the extra additional respect. I rather like that. Okay. So that was your Canadian stepfather.
Yes.
Okay.
Who was wonderful to us.
And did he run around with pikes, or did he remember the Home Guard as it is in Dad's army, or was it?
He wouldn't have known.
Okay. And so you had brothers and sisters, did you?
Yes, I had an older brother who was in the Navy, and a younger brother and sister. Okay. And they've all died.
Okay. Where were you, so you were in the middle pecking order?
I was the second.
Okay. And you went to school in London?
Yes, I was sent to boarding school actually when I was 10.
Okay.
But I was very unhappy and bullied, and there was a dreadful matron there who would have been put away if times
awful.
Yes.
And
very dreadful.
Dare I ask? I mean, the food must have been terrible.
I wasn't worried about the food in those days.
Just
didn't worry me at all. It was adequate.
It was just very harsh, was it? So you went to St Paul's. You grew up in Kensington. You had a sort of very happy childhood. Looked after by your mother. Must have worked extremely hard. Did she was working?
Well, we had 9 staff.
Okay, all right. But I mean, awful
she
to.
She had to organise.
Losing your husband at such an age, with a 1-year-old child was absolutely traumatic. Your interests as a child, did you?
It was simply horses.
Oh, horses. Okay. And did you ride often?
Yes. My treat was riding in the Row on Sundays.
Okay.
And I used to go on riding holidays.
Okay. And you loved it, did you? Yeah. Did you have your own horse? Or?
No, it was my bitter regret. My sister got it.
Okay.
During the war, when we lived in the country, but they always said not anymore.
Okay. That's a younger child being spoiled.
Yeah, absolutely. She promptly fell off and broke her hip, so it didn't last very long.
I'm just going to sort of glide into Warsaw. Can you remember the build-up to the Second World War?
Yes, I can, very much.
Did it affect you in any great way, or was it...
Well, it coincided with the expulsion of the Jews from Germany, and my mother did a lot of work trying to find girls and women jobs here, because they could only get permits if they worked as domestic servants.
Right.
And she worked terribly hard at it, and everything had to be typewritten. I remember my father's secretary, who was a nice little Aryan blonde girl, used to come in the evenings and type the letters, and my mother had a good deal of success with it.
And your father's, she was a Jewish girl that had been...
No, not...
Oh, she wasn't,
no,
okay.
No.
Just
a secretary.
Just a secretary, okay. Fascinating.
Yeah.
And so I mean, your mother sort of, took an active interest, an active sort of almost...
Oh, she was always very active. She was a clever woman, and she'd wanted to go to university, but her father said he didn't want a blue stocking for a daughter.
Right. Well, there you go. Age-old story. We won't delve into that, but so interested the horses and your mother taking a sort of very heavy political interest in that. Can you remember the outbreak of war itself?
Yes, I can, and how we were living in a rented house in Penn at that point.
In where, sorry?
Penn, Buckinghamshire.
Okay, right.
Yeah, High Wycombe.
Okay.
And all the windows were sealed up with this brown tape.
Yeah.
And huge, great Huntley and Palmer tins full of sugar and flour and
sort of the emergency.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And we listened, and everybody expected to be bombed at that
instant.
Later.
I mean, you remember the actual day, and you heard Neville Chamberlain make the announcement on the radio.
Yes.
What did you think at the time? I mean,
I don't know what I thought. I mean, I thought it was ghastly.
Yeah.
But it had been building up, so it was no...
Tension was certainly rising.
No real surprise.
Yeah. Okay. And were you worried, or do you think? I mean.
No, in the way that children feel can't happen to you.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And you mentioned your husband earlier. He joined in 1939, you said.
Yes, he went on a camp. What was a reserve.
Okay, yeah.
And he never got back out of uniform.
Oh, really? Okay. He loved it, did he?
No.
Oh, he didn't. He felt the need to
yes.
do his duty.
Yes.
I see. Okay. When did you meet your husband, actually?
He worked at my father's firm.
Okay.
And when I came back from Canada, he was on leave, and he came to say goodbye to my father just before they went over to Normandy, and we met.
Okay. Oh, I see.
He escorted me back to my Wren's quarters in London.
Really? Okay.
And I saluted him.
Oh, really? Yeah. Wow. Saluting your future husband. That's quite a good story.
I didn't know it was going to be a future
husband. No, not that time. But, so, you must have been, let's think, you were 14 at the time that war broke out, something like that?
Yes.
And then your father was
2.5 years in Canada.
Okay, and so
I could get back if I did war work when I was, I can't remember whether it was 17 or 18, but it was 1942. I crossed over I crossed over in a Belgian ammunition ship that was sunk on its next journey.
Good grief.
And my parents, I always admired them for letting me come back at that time, because it was fairly dangerous.
Yeah, I mean...
And it turned out that December 42, they had the highest number of casualties with the U-boats.
A bad time to be in the North Atlantic, certainly.
And it took 3 weeks in convoy.
3 weeks?
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been quite a tense 3 weeks.
Well, again, when you're young.
It was a bit of an adventure, I suppose. Okay, that's good. So, you say you were evacuated just after Dunkirk. Was that the event that triggered everything, Dunkirk?
Yes, well, being Jewish and thinking that Hitler was going to invade, my parents agonized over it. I can remember a dreadful week when my mother really didn't want to go, but the Canadian family said, you must come, and it meant splitting the families. And on the boat going out to Montreal, it was about June the 20th, something like that, there were a lot of families who all had connections with Canada or the States, because you couldn't take any money with you, so they had to be dependent on the families out there, and everybody was just terribly depressed.
Really? I mean, was there a day when you were told by your parents that you were going to be sent to Canada?
Yes, and it was just when I was doing just about to do matric, and I'd worked terribly hard for it, and
oh no,
suddenly it all disappeared.
Hopes dashed, as it were. And then they sat you down and said, we're going to send you away so that you're safe from the bombing, presumably.
Well, my mother brought my younger brother and sister.
Oh, she did? Okay. And were you taken away? I mean, did you catch a train to a port somewhere? Did you?
Yes, up in Liverpool.
Up in Liverpool.
And that was memorable because my sister was 4 or 5 at the time, and we suddenly discovered she'd taught herself to read.
just out of the
So she was very clever. She went on to Cambridge and one thing and another. But I asked her how she did it at a much later date, and she said, in those days you used to have lavatory cloths hanging. You wouldn't know about them; they're terribly unhygienic.
Right.
But they used to hang from the door.
Right.
With lavatory written on in big letters, and she said she taught herself from that.
Just L-A-V-A.
Yes.
Oh, right. Okay. I see. Interesting. That's a good. I mean, enterprising stuff. And so she just told you this and she went with you to Canada.
Yes.
Okay. And your brother as well.
Yes, my younger brother.
So you were sent to your stepfather's relatives, were you? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And my younger brother arrived with measles.
With measles?
Yes.
Oh,
and was terribly ill. And my mother never really looked after the children because we'd always had nannies and things.
Yeah.
And
your mother went with you, did she?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'd never had anything to do with the children, but I got to know them.
Yeah. I mean, just out of it, did you in 1940? Did you palpably think that England might fall to?
I don't think I ever felt it might fall. I don't think that came into it, but one thought there was going to be a ghastly invasion and war.
Yeah, okay. And so getting to Canada was quite a relief, I suppose.
Not a relief.
Not a relief, I mean a kind of...
I didn't want to go at all.
Yeah, needs must, I suppose.
And as soon as I got there, I planned to come back.
Yeah.
I went to McGill for a year.
McGill? Is that...
And then I did a year in hospital, radiography, so that I would be qualified to get back.
So you went to McGill and essentially, like your sister taught herself to read, you trained yourself in hospital?
No, it was...
there was a course?
Yes.
But you voluntarily embarked on that course so that you'd qualify for a job?
Yes.
I see. That's and so you were motivated by what motivated you to come back to England?
Can't think of the word. Patriotism.
Patriotism.
Yeah.
Good old-fashioned duty.
Yeah. Yes.
And so you returned to England. Well, firstly, let me ask you about Canada a bit more. Was Canada hugely different from the UK at the time?
Yes, completely.
I mean, were you in the countryside or?
No, we were in Montreal, and I used to walk to McGill every day, and I enjoyed the work there. It was partly in French and partly English, and I made a lot of friends there. But always with the intention of coming back.
You were still very young.
Yes, I was much too young actually for the university. They have these awful sororities and fraternities that I refused to join and caused a lot of ill will.
And I mean, because everyone must have been older than you, and
yes.
sort of they were much, up for a good time, I suppose. Did the war seem close in Canada?
No, it was miles away.
There was no rationing. There was
nothing. Really.
No, you didn't see
and
uniforms.
Letters, of course, took about 3 weeks
to get back to the UK. Who are you writing to?
Well,
your father, of course.
It was backwards and forth.
Yeah. And you couldn't send telegrams, sorry.
I did. Well, yes. I remember my High Mistress of St. Paul's sent a telegram to McGill saying if I'd taken it, I would have passed.
Mm-hmm. And in Canada, so you embarked on this university course at the age of, 15, 16.
Yes.
And everyone else there would have been,
everyone had makeup, and I thought it was ghastly.
Oh, really? It was kind of
boys, and but I did get a few friends.
Yes, yeah. It was similar age to you? Partly Canadian.
And partly the one to English people.
And how was your French?
It was good enough for
passable.
Lectures.
From school?
It's rotted now.
No, yeah. So it goes. Okay. So, having essentially trained yourself, I know you don't say it, but you voluntarily went through what must have been quite an unnerving experience for a 15-year-old to go to university in a foreign country, away from home, away from your family, all while being looked after by your mother and your father's relatives here, in Canada, and then feeling the sort of pangs of patriotic duty, you felt the need to travel back to England, having given yourself the necessary qualifications, which would mean that you could do war work. The crossing back over to get to Canada, you went on a Belgian ammunition ship. I find it extraordinary that a 14-year-old girl and brothers and sisters and parents and things would be crowded in with ammunition.
Well, we didn't know it before.
No, of course. But
actually,
good grief.
We embarked in Halifax, New Brunswick, and then we sailed up to Newfoundland, St. John.
Okay.
And because we had ammunition on board, we were anchored right out in the middle of nowhere with a red flag, because they had a big explosion there in the First World War, and they didn't want to repeat.
Right, I see. Most people, I think, would be pretty unsettled about the prospect of being stuck on board a ship full of ammunition.
Well, there were only about 4 or 5 passengers. There was a nice woman from Liverpool and a nice Free Frenchman whom I kept in touch with afterwards.
Oh, really?
And he was a sailor, and his boat had been sunk, and he was coming back.
No smoking on board? Do you remember?
I don't remember that, because
of course it wouldn't affect you.
Wouldn't have affected me. I don't remember.
Okay.
Everybody smoked in those
days.
days.
So you assume it must have happened.
in the Wrens, when I first joined, we were in these huge Nissen huts with 50 beds, 50, not cots, what do you call them? Well,
bunk beds, also bunks.
Beds, yes. And 49 out of the 50 smoked.
Oh, really?
It was horrible.
Oh, you were the one, were you?
I never liked it.
Oh, really? Okay, okay. So you travelled back, you were on another ship, presumably, to get back to the UK? To get back to England? Sorry, we're backpedaling a bit, I know.
Well, this Belgian ship.
Oh, you took the Belgian ship back to England from Canada?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I see. And you landed in,
Liverpool.
Liverpool, okay. And you, so did you travel back on your own?
Yes.
At the age of?
17.
At the age of 17, okay, during the height of the U-boat peril, were there other passengers with you?
Yes.
The five that you mentioned?
Yes.
Okay. Right.
And no doors could be shut.
No doors could be shut, they had to be open the whole time. So it must have been absolutely freezing.
I expect it was, but I don't.
Okay. Right, and so that was another 3 weeks. You get back to Liverpool with this plan to join up. Did you know which branch you were going to join at that point?
No, I had no idea. I trained as a radiologist, but when I got back I found that the training was completely different here.
Really?
And they wouldn't accept the Canadian. So you had to train for 2 years here, and that didn't appeal to me.
Okay.
And I had a great friend who was here, who came back. I don't know where it was. I was with her parents.
Is it this page, maybe? Oh, sorry.
That's it.
That one there?
She was a very great friend of mine. And she came back just ahead of me.
Yes.
Her father was a general in the Irish Guards.
Okay.
And she said, if you can get in to be a radio mechanic, do.
Yeah.
Because it's very worthwhile.
It's a worthwhile thing. That's her father, is it?
Yes.
And he
was, well over 6 foot, and her mother was about 4 foot.
And so he must have been playing a heavy part in the war, being.
No, I don't think he did.
Okay.
I think he was past it.
Okay, I see.
I don't know, he may have been. I know he took us to the theatre to see Olivia
Dear Larry.
Lee.
Okay.
In The Doctor's Dilemma.
Right.
And we were in the front row, which I'd never been in before.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Terrific treat.
Yeah.
And then he took us on to his club. I can't remember which one, but it was a gala night for me.
Okay. Yeah, no. Exciting. And so, how long had you been back in England before you
joined up? It was very frustrating. I didn't join the Wrens. I couldn't join the Wrens until May. Because
of your birth?
No, just red tape.
Just red tape?
I think so.
Oh, crikey. And so what month was it that you arrived in Liverpool? December, so okay. And between...
And I did voluntary work at the Canadian Hospital in Taplow. And my grandparents sent me to look after a cousin who'd got chicken pox. And,
right.
I was made to be useful.
Yeah. I suppose everyone had to get their shoulder against them. No, exactly.
Maids.
I see. And I mean, you're still. I find it's just amazing how still very young you were to be sort of travelling around England on your own.
I felt quite old.
Well, I suppose you've been through a fair amount at that point. And what was your reaction to getting back to England with the barrage balloons and the ration?
Overjoyed.
You were overjoyed.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Despite the sort of comforts of Canada.
Yes.
It was good to be home. And you didn't struggle with the rationing or the blackout or anything like that.
I was sent to collect my rations, and I remember the cheddar cheese, which I hadn't had all the time in Canada. I don't get it. And I think I ate my whole week's ration on the way home.
You missed the cheddar, did you?
Grandmother was horrified.
Okay. So you say you joined the Wrens in May. That's when you started training. What was the training like? It was different to Canada.
It was absolutely scrubbing floors and more floors.
Oh, sort of naval brasso then?
Yes, we were sent to Queen Anne's Mansions, which I think has been pulled down by St James's Tube Station.
Right.
And that needed a lot of scrubbing out. And after that we were sent to the big institute at Mill Hill to be singled out for our different categories.
Okay.
And that was more scrubbing out.
Okay.
And then I was lucky. I was sent to Chelsea Polytechnic for a 3-month course in physics.
Right.
Everybody who was a radio mech had to have a maths O-level or
okay.
or what it was. So you were well educated, fairly educated, and there was lots of choice, and I made a lot of good friends at that point.
Yeah, I see. So, what did you think of the scrubbing out? I mean,
it didn't worry me at all.
It didn't worry you.
No.
Okay. You didn't think this is annoying red tape I'm meant to do. Okay.
I don't think so. I was so thrilled.
Okay, to be back home and sort of serving your
winning the war.
Yeah, winning the war, exactly. Yeah. Okay. And it wasn't a shock to the system, the military life. I mean. No.
Not after boarding school.
Not after boarding school, right. Did you find there were lots of girls who felt the same way about it?
No. I think there was a lot of homesickness.
Oh, really?
People who never left home.
Never left home.
But a lot of kindred spirits.
Yeah. So there was quite heavy camaraderie then? Camaraderie was sort of quite heavy. Okay.
Absolutely.
And you never... You
can see with all the photos.
With all these, lovely photos in front of me. Did you feel prepared after training for becoming a radio mechanic?
I think so, yes.
Did you have to dismantle radios and things like that?
Yes, and there were a lot of new models. I don't think it was my best moment. I never quite understood how they worked, but I should have done by the end of it. And I remember we used to try and build them ourselves, but everything was so different.
Yeah, there must have been quite a few models, as you say, different models of radio.
Well, they were all just valves and condensers,
right,
and batteries. These huge batteries, accumulators, which had to be filled up with water and sulfuric acid, which we had to lug around the airfield. And because the airplanes were scattered because of bombing, it was
heavy work.
Yes.
I mean, how much did a battery weigh?
I don't know, but I had a basket, and you would only put 2 or 3 in.
Right. Crikey. Let me just... So you are now a fully fledged radio mechanic in the Wrens.
Yes.
What rank were you at this point?
Well, when you finished the course, you were a leading Wren.
Okay.
And after you've done a refresher course, you were a petty officer.
Okay. And how did your parents react to your joining up?
Oh, I think they
were pleased.
Yes. My brother at that point was in the Navy. Before he got his commission, he was on the Arctic convoys.
Right.
And my own father, who was a doctor, was on the Arctic convoys in the First World War.
Right.
And got the DSC for quelling a mutiny on board.
Really? Grief. So you're sorry to backpedal again here, but your brother had joined up at roughly the same time as you had?
Yes, as soon as he could after his first year at Cambridge.
Right. And he joined straight in the Navy?
Yes.
Navy? Yeah. And you say he did convoys before he became commissioned, or commission.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And then he was in destroyers.
Okay. And up in the Arctic as well, or?
No, at a much better time in East Africa.
Oh, really? Okay.
In India.
Yeah, that's somewhat less nippy. And during your sort of training in London and everything, and sort of your immediate, I don't know how immediate it was, but your sort of, dissemination to different postings, and your class sort of splitting up, as it were, to go and do their jobs. There wasn't much time for fun, was there, or were you able to?
I think, there was discipline, but there were good moments, and there were a lot of dances, and
there were dances.
Yes, and boyfriends.
Oh, okay.
It was all right.
All right, okay. And who organised these dances?
The station.
The station, okay. And who? What were the men? Who were they?
Well, they were varied.
Okay.
And they were imported sometimes with the army, and there were Norwegians there.
Oh, Norwegians.
Whom I remember.
Okay. Handsome blonde chaps with nice blue eyes.
Fondly.
Yeah.
And my husband ended the war, liberating Norway.
Oh.
And he later on had a lot of Norwegian friends.
Okay. What was the alcohol situation? Was that very...
what?
Alcohol, was that heavily regulated?
It certainly didn't affect me, and I should think probably the men were quite beery.
Okay.
There was Naffy.
And
have you been to Bletchley?
I have, yes. Yeah.
Well, they've got a replica of the Naffy.
Oh, have they? Okay,
yes,
I don't quite remember, but I'll have to...
And you could get it. I'm sure it was cheap.
Yeah.
Or they probably didn't consider it cheap in those days.
No. And let me just... So, where was your first posting to, then?
Arbroath.
Arbroath.
Yes. And I remember going up in the night trains, which were awful.
Yeah. I've taken a few of those myself.
Yes,
they're pretty uncomfortable even now.
And we arrived on New Year's Day, so you can imagine everything was closed.
Yeah. Where had you spent Christmas?
I don't know.
So you arrived in Arbroath, and there was an air station there, wasn't
it? Yes, very big. It was an observer training.
Okay. For Fleet Air Arm pilots.
Yes.
Okay. What sort of aircraft were they operating?
Well, there were Swordfish.
Swordfish.
There were Lysanders, these tiny little planes that parachutists used to use because they land and take off. But I could never understand that because they were terribly noisy, and I would have thought they would have alerted Germans from miles around, but they did.
Okay.
And then there were these dive bombers, Barracudas. They had a lot of accidents. And
really?
And the later development of the Swordfish was the Albacore.
Okay.
With a closed...
Do you want me to just pause on it? So, you were at Arbroath, servicing all these aircraft for 2 years, and your billets or barracks or Nissen huts, what was the sort of day-to-day?
It was Letham Grange. It was one of the Scottish big houses, which I think is a big boys' school now.
Right, okay. And what was it comfortable?
I wasn't fussy in those days.
Okay. Must have been freezing cold up there.
Yes.
Yeah.
That it was. I was perpetually cold and damp. Yeah. And I was discharged. Well, not discharged, but I left with chronic bronchitis.
Good grief. And, did you spend time in hospital for that? Or?
No.
And you just cracked on?
Yeah.
It seems... Good grief. And then from Arbroath, servicing all these aircraft, and you evidently went on a few trips up into them. You went down...
There was one which I remember the cockpits were open.
Right.
And you had a safety strap to the floor. And the pilot that particular day was trying to shake off a hangover. You asked about drinking, he obviously did. And he looped the loop and he went what was called hedge hopping, which is flying terribly low.
Right.
And I said to him, you know, my safety strap didn't work. He said, good God, girl, think of the court-martial I would have had.
Yes, no, not to mention losing a valuable war weapon. So the strap was just a sort of canvas thing.
A canvas with a clip like a dog's lead on the end.
And you just attached it around your waist, is that?
I suppose so, I can't remember.
Good grief.
It didn't work.
No, well, yeah, no, pretty hairy then.
Yes.
Especially, so you just sort of hold on for the loop to loop. Okay. During the loop there.
Yes.
Okay. I mean,
try
I'll do my best to try it. I'm not sure I've quite the bottle for it, but wow, that's and that was presumably in a sawfish or something with an open cockpit. So from Arbroath, what was the food like there? Actually, was there fish? I mean, did you eat?
It just didn't worry me.
It just didn't worry. Okay, no.
The only thing that worried me was the nanny that looked after my small brother and sister in London. She came from Arbroath.
Okay.
And they had smokies.
Yeah, that's yeah.
And he was a cobbler, and she was a nice old Scottish lady, and she wanted to do her war work, and she invited me and my best friend to high tea often, and they always produced crab or something that they thought was a great treat.
Yeah.
And at that point I was allergic to shellfish, and
no.
after every visit I didn't have the nerve to say that it makes me sick, but I was sick after every.
Oh no! Well, you know.
I did eventually.
Valiant non-fussiness there, I have to say. So, I mean, you had a nice 2 years up in Arbroath, and you enjoyed it.
Yes.
How often were you flying?
Oh, I suppose once a week.
Once a week, and that was to test the radios all working and everything. I see. And then from Arbroath, you went down to
various courses, which were in Warrington.
Warrington, okay.
To update one.
Right, yeah. And then you were...
And the Royal Naval Museum at Yeovilton kept all my workbooks.
Right, okay, yeah. So they're in a good place then. And you were stationed down in Yeovilton for a bit of time as well, I think.
Yeah.
How long were you stationed down there?
I don't remember, but just a few months.
Okay. And so you joined in 1942 then. You joined the WRNS in 42. So this 2 years takes us to 44 at this point. And then you did various courses, and you did those until the end of the war, did you? Or
well, the refresher courses weren't very long, and I ended up at Culham, which was very dull. I got very bored there, I remember. And I was at Swindon at one point, Rawton, again, unchopped and changed.
Yeah. And I'd be interested to know about the atmosphere of places like Arbroath and Yeovil during the war.
It was terrific.
Terrific.
Yes.
I mean, did life just go on absolutely normally, or did?
Well, it was quite normal on the air stations. And one got leave, and you hitchhiked home.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, I was going to ask you about leave actually.
They were very generous with their leave.
Yeah. And you'd hitchhike home?
Yes. And I remember arriving at Kentish Town once, and a police car gave me a lift. And at that point I'd got 2 rabbits for the family, because they were 2 a penny in the country. And I left them in the car, and the police brought them back afterwards.
No, that's very kind of them. Rabbit must be a slight rarity as well, so it could have been not to hang on to them. So you'd spend your leave in London, would you, with your family?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. For the most part.
I would have done.
Yeah. Can I ask you about things like air raids? Did you ever? I mean, you must have.
We had some air raids when we were at Warrington,
Mm-hmm.
and you heard the buzz bombs.
Right, of course.
Stop.
Yeah. Quite.
But I missed all the blitz, and I felt very badly about that.
Oh, you felt like you'd missed this.
I should have.
Okay.
Been there.
Yeah. With your father and
yes.
I see. Do you think a lot of people felt like that, who had missed the blitz? Probably. Okay. Did you ever come into contact with? I mean, I don't know how. Did you ever personally? You sort of heard the buzz bombs. You must have seen German aeroplanes as well, presumably.
I can't ever remember seeing a German.
Okay. Any German?
I mean, we were in Scotland.
Yeah.
Most of the time. I remember being in Scotland on D-Day and feeling really out of it.
You felt quite
when everybody was celebrating in London.
While they were going over.
Yeah.
Including the man who was eventually to be your husband.
Yes. Well, he was in France.
You know, and you of course knew that he was going to France. He was.
Yes, we didn't know when, and although D-Day he would have gone to Norway.
Mm-hmm. Oh, to Norway. Okay. I see. Do you remember any particularly funny incidents which happened?
Well, there was that one in the plane. I had to write this note for a brief history in wartime. I don't think there was anything. I mean, we laughed a lot. I can't remember what about. I've said it was a useful experience crossing the Atlantic to see firsthand what conditions were like for the sailors, because they were pretty awful, pretty hard.
And, I mean, you must have felt, I mean, just speaking to it, it seems like you feel like you almost feel as if you wanted more out of the war. You wanted to keep doing more for your country, and to sort of. Did you feel animosity towards the Nazis and?
Oh, great
animosity. Yeah. Was that informed by?
It was difficult to stop after the war. I mean, one would never buy a German car, never buy a Japanese car. One of my close friends in the WRNS, her brother was. His cruiser was sunk off Singapore when they lost 3 big ships.
Right. And
she heard he'd been rescued, but didn't hear another word right through the war, and she kept faith. And he returned home an absolute, wreck of a man.
Yeah. I mean, did you? I mean, your friends and your colleagues must have all in some way suffered a loss or a...
Yes, I think they did.
And you would cope with it by pushing on regardless.
Carry on.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lesson to be learned from that. Did you have time to meet with male naval rates? I mean, were they?
We worked with them.
You worked with them.
Yeah.
Okay. And they were doing the same job as you, or?
A lot of them were. Yeah. Well, no, not a lot, because they were mostly sent overseas if they were fit.
I see. Did you know lots of men on the convoys and lots of men in ships?
No. Once, when I was stationed at Warrington, a few WRNS and I decided that we wanted to see our radios in situ in the planes.
Mm-hmm.
So we trooped off to the docks, and HMS Victoria was there. And the sailor who greeted us, we said we'd like to see over the ship. And he said, well, I have to speak to the officer of the day. And a very handsome Marine came up, and a lot of the Wrens said, about 4 or 5 of us, I think I know him. And I thought it would be silly for me to say I think I know him. But afterwards, of course, he was a friend of my brother's at Harrow.
Oh, really? So that's...
And I went to his 21st, so that was quite fun.
Was it his 21st before?
Shortly after.
Just shortly after that, yes. Okay. Mm. That's right. And your brother, he was still working on in
was
ships,
away
in destroyers.
Yes.
And when did he come back?
He was invalided home from Africa and put in charge of a training something or other. I forget, Middle Wallop.
Right, okay.
I think somewhere down there.
Okay.
They had various courses going. He had a number of blackouts and they couldn't find the cause.
Oh, really?
Wasn't very sensible to leave him.
No. What about your sister? What was she up to during all this?
She was tiny.
She was still tiny?
Yes.
Okay.
She was still at school. And my mother brought my younger brother and sister home on what was called a banana boat. It was part of the Lend-Lease.
Right.
And they were ships which were half finished and going to be aircraft carriers. And it went to Lisbon, and then they had to fly home from Lisbon.
Oh, okay.
Because Lisbon was neutral at that point.
Yeah. And did your mother have, did your mother find it, she was able to look after all her children? I mean, obviously you didn't need looking after, but I mean, would you go and...
In fact, Nanny came out with a cousin, one of the last boats to leave England, at the time of everybody evacuated, because she brought her little cousin, who was the same age as my brother, and so she was absolutely wonderful. Yeah. She stayed with my mother for about 30 years, until she died of a heart attack, just like Mark did yesterday. She went quite suddenly with her cup of tea.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. That was after the war, was it? Your mother died.
Her second name was Pretoria.
Pretoria.
So.
South African connection.
South African history.
Okay.
Yes, 1900.
Okay. Oh, for the Boer War then.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. I sort of Pretoria, Ladysmith, and Mafeking, and all that stuff.
What did you read at St Andrews?
I did history. So I
all about
I have a few little, and my mother's actually South African. So we've got a bit of sort of first-hand knowledge, I suppose. I don't know what you'd call it. And so in 1945, VE Day, do you remember where you were when the war ended?
Yes, in Scotland, and I was very disappointed because nothing happened up there. Everything was in London.
Yeah. There was no celebrations in Scotland, or comparatively few.
Well, I suppose there were celebrations, but nothing very noticeable.
Mm-hmm. And so, again, life just went on. You went to work the next morning, and how long did you stay in the Wrens after the war?
I can't remember. I was at Cullum, I know. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. No. And VJ Day, do you remember that as well?
No.
So after the war, you went back home?
Yes.
And did you stop serving in the Wrens, or did you?
Yes.
And you got a job, did you?
I was I didn't know what I was going to do, how I was going to earn a living, and I took up stenotyping, which I don't suppose you know anymore. It's a syllabic shorthand on a machine, and because I thought I wanted to be a reporter.
Right.
So I did that until I was pregnant, and I got married in the middle, unlike these days.
Yeah, no, quite, yeah.
And my mother sent me on a 3-month cooking course, good housekeeping. That was very useful.
And this was with your husband at this point?
Yes. Well, it was before I married.
Okay.
I think we got engaged March 1947, married in June 47.
Okay. And he'd come back in 45 as well, had he?
Yes.
From Norway?
Yes, and he was asked to write the report on the Norwegian operations.
Oh, really? Okay.
It took quite a time, and they were stationed in Essex at Colchester, I think.
What was your husband's full name? Sorry, it was,
Sam.
Sam.
Sam Sebba.
Sam Sebba. Okay. And where were you living with your husband and after the war?
My parents bought a flat. My grandfather had been chairman of one of the big insurance companies, and it was very difficult to get flats in those days. And they offered my mother a flat in Kingston House, which is Knightsbridge, and a flat in Highgate, overlooking the ponds. And my mother was so struck with the view at Highgate that they bought a flat there.
Right.
And then when everybody came back to London, she so liked Highgate that they bought a biggish house near Kenwood, and the 4 of us were there.
Okay. And
with chickens in the garden.
With chickens in the garden. Get round the rationing, I suppose.
Yeah.
And life post-war was good again. I mean,
yes.
it was.
Yeah.
Did you sort of? I mean, you must have been, Did you find the war sort of exhilarating? In an exhilarating
yes,
time
I think
for you?
One did at that age.
You sort of found it an exciting
yes.
time to be alive.
Yes.
And
yes.
Dare I say it, or almost enjoyed all the sort of adventurous
yes,
experiences.
Yes, there was a lot of enjoyment with it.
And sort of
yes, and very good friends.
Yes.
There's only one still alive, and she lives in America. When she married an American, he sold his house and bought a boat, and he earned his living by writing on these trans-world trips. But she's a bit demented now,
right.
a year or 2 older than I am. She went to St Swithin's at Winchester.
So you had lots of good friends.
Good friends, yes.
And good memories as well. Do you often think about the war now? I mean,
not really anymore.
Really.
No. Only when people like you.
Anyone, I can't impose my beastly society on you.
How did you get into this?
I emailed another chap who organises this. I don't know if he organises it, but is sort of involved in it. Went to Sherborne, and he was sort of advertised the fact that he was involved. So I wrote to him and asking whether I could sort of get involved myself, and he said yes. And then this is actually the first interview I've done. So it's.
I was just answering your email when I got the news yesterday. That's
yes.
why I didn't answer it.
Why don't I just stop the recording there?
If you sold at a joint badly at all, it would soon come adrift, and you'd know about it.
Yeah.
And
And of course the cold as well, surely, to tighten up.
Yes, and the damp. And of course there were no transistors in those days, just large heavy sets with accumulators that had to be constantly topped up and carried to the plane. My overriding memories of those are those of the truly remarkable wartime spirit and friendships, and of the intense and penetrating cold on the airfields, and of damp clothes.
That's fantastic. How did the uniforms stand up to the cold?
We used to wear bell-bottoms and
right.
thick naval jerseys. I don't ever remember having a greatcoat. I suppose we had them, I don't know.
No. Well, thank you very, very much for speaking to me.
Now this other woman has